Hi, my name is Danny and welcome to Pagan Perspective Subs Week. This week our question comes from our very own Megan, and she wants to know what our burial rites are like in our practice and what happens in our practice when someone dies. So first, just a quick apology, I am very late. My month has gotten away from me for a multitude of reasons. So sorry this is late, but hopefully you will enjoy it nonetheless. So for me as a Druid, death and ritual at that time is pretty important. I think those life ceremonies like birth and marriage and death and kind of initiation into whatever religious practice, those are important parts of our lives that really benefit from a community or at least individual celebration that is a little bit different than we might typically have. I think death is a very important part to recognize in a person's life because we have so many very interesting taboos in our culture that I don't think always align with the pagan perspective. As someone who's connected to the earth, who really likes gardening, I know the benefit of decay and ending and compost. That's what allows my garden to thrive the following year. So I think it's important that we honor the transition to the other world, into death, and really celebrate a person's life and honor whatever potential they might be going to. For me, I'm going to use my sister's death as an example of how I approach death now and kind of what we did as a family for that. Now, my sister was a practicing Wiccan. She wasn't a Druid, but definitely a heavily Celtic-inspired Wiccan path. So we knew her death was coming. It was not a surprise in the least. She had a rare disease called FOP, where her muscles and ligaments turned to bone. There's a link in the description if you're curious about more. But her disease isn't exactly what caused her death. It really was the catalyst for a lot of other health problems that eventually kind of escalated to a point where there wasn't much we could do to sustain life. My sister willingly enrolled in a hospice program, and she was lucky enough to be accepted into a program through a Grace Hospice, which is locally used in Madison and the South Central Wisconsin area for hospice needs. They do some in-home care and they have a center, which is where my sister was. That was only possible through community donations to a Grace. My sister had a team at hospice. She had her regular physicians, she had a Grace physician and nurse practitioners and nurses and aides and a spiritual person guidance and like a social care person, and the family was involved, and this whole team and my sister were focused on what she wanted in her death process, the days leading up to it, health concerns, activities, what she wanted her funeral to be like. So she had some keen ideas on what she wanted to happen to her, and her team was basically set up, how do we facilitate this for her? My sister went into hospice care for kind of the final time around Labor Day, but she had been in and out throughout the whole month of August. So really from the first harvest festival all the way until Samhain, my sister was in hospice care, which is really quite fitting for someone who follows the wheel of the year. The spiritual guide that a Grace found for my sister was a pagan priestess who was just kind of starting her priestess training, but was so intuitive and amazing to work with and understood my sister at a really fine level that is hard to imagine possible, because my sister was kind of a unique character, and this priestess was a perfect fit. Her job was kind of to focus on the spiritual, and even though they didn't have the same pagan path, they worked well on like what my sister's spiritual needs were. So she really wanted some certain rituals and spells as she was going into this process, not exactly for healing, but kind of sanctuary of spirit, I would say. And so the priestess helped my sister kind of do that. And when my sister lost the ability to communicate and was just kind of drifting in and out of the other worlds, in my belief, the priestess was there to help facilitate. So we set up a little altar in her hospice room. It had like a fake LED candles and a wand that the priestess made. Lots of elements from the garden and feathers from the farm, things that we wanted to help align the focus of letting my sister die in peace and without as much pain. It reached a point where my sister was obviously mostly in the other worlds, and there was very little communication with us, but she was still holding on to something but couldn't communicate what that was. So we did a cutting of the cord ritual that the priestess kind of helped write up, and it used some elemental grounding. We were in a circle around her hospital bed and did some symbols and metaphors to kind of release her spirit, cut her ties to this physical plane. The priestess had seen this do some pretty impressive releasing in the past, but for my sister, it didn't do that. She held on for weeks after that, but it did change the presence and anxiety of my sister. I think it became much more peaceful in her room most of the time. When my sister finally passed, her desire was really to donate her body to science. So the university helped us get an official autopsy to the research group that does FOP, and then her body was cremated. The family did a short memorial service there at a Grace hospice, which wasn't our intent originally, but my brother really said that family and friends would appreciate it. So we did that, where we told stories about my sister and sang some songs, and it was really quite lovely. Family from all over the place came, which was unexpected, and it wasn't really spiritual, it was just community-based. Then we went to the farm, and my parents and brother and sister-in-law and a couple aunts and uncles did a spreading of the ashes on the farm. We did a ritual that my father wrote, actually, that was very elemental based and about releasing and growth and kind of welcoming whatever changes were going on for my sister's spirit and physical body. We planted wildflowers on that part of the farm right afterwards, so a lot of the lovely flowers that my sister enjoyed, especially around her birthday, could bloom, and that her ashes were being used as compost and as a part of reseeding that part of the field for the next year. So that was my experience with my sister's death. I want to say that if you are experiencing questions near death, or are thinking about becoming a priestess or priest or midwifery for death, that is something our culture really needs, and I hope you pursue it if you're feeling that call. There are a couple books that you might find useful or interesting. There is the Pagan Book of Living and Dying by Starhawk and Reclaiming authors. This is jam-packed of ritual ideas, personal stories, songs, symbols. It covers a host of things. I really think it should be on every pagan's bookshelf, and that everyone should read it before they're encountering death, because it helps you align with that part of life and to be more open to it. I've done a full book review of this on my personal channel, so you can click here and check it out. The other book is The Journey into Spirit, A Pagan's Perspective on Death, Dying, and Bereavement. This is by a Druid and Celtic pagan who actually works in the medical and commercial field of death and dying. So he's worked in some morgues, and he talks a lot about his personal experience. It is mostly a memoir, but there are some elements for ritual and how one handles grief. It's also a very excellent read for paganism and death. If you have any comments, especially if you've experienced working with hospice in any way, I think those people are fantastic, and I'd love to hear other people's experience with hospice care. Please comment below. I do want to give everyone a warning that for the last couple weeks in December, we'll be taking some time off because of Yule and the holidays and getting everything ready for the next year. So don't forget to go through our old playlists and check out old videos and topics. We have so many videos that there's plenty to keep you entertained. Thanks for watching, and as always, may you find peace in the sacred grove.